Beneath the soil of Alabama lie secrets that defy all explanation. This state holds some of America's most profound ancient mysteries, and by the end of this journey, you will see the distant past in a completely new light. We will stand before colossal earthworks built for forgotten gods and examine artifacts that hint at impossible journeys. Why did a brilliant civilization vanish without a trace, and what cryptic messages are carved into silent stones? The deeper we dig, the stranger the story becomes. What does it mean when the land itself holds memories we can no longer understand? The landscape of Moundville is a silent symphony of earth and sky. Just south of the modern city of Tuscaloosa, the ground rises into more than 24 immense flat-topped platforms, arranged with deliberate precision around a vast central plaza. This was not a random collection of hills. This was the beating heart of a powerful civilization, a city built entirely of soil, carried basket by basket over generations. For nearly 500 years, from around the year 1000 to 1450, this place thrived as the political and spiritual capital of the Mississippian world in this region. The largest mound, a towering structure that overlooks the plaza, likely supported the home of a paramount chief or a temple of immense importance. From that height, one could look out and see a meticulously ordered universe of human creation, a testament to a society with complex social structure, deep religious beliefs, and astonishing engineering skill. Their artistry speaks volumes about a rich inner world. Archaeologists have uncovered artifacts of breathtaking beauty and symbolic power, like the famous rattlesnake disc, a circular stone palette carved with a coiled serpent, its forked tongue flickering toward a central hand-eye symbol. This was not mere decoration. It was a sacred object, a key to a cosmology we can only partially decipher. They crafted elaborate pottery, engraved shell ornaments, and copper plates depicting birdmen and other supernatural beings. This was a people connected to a vast trade network, with materials and ideas flowing from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. They were astronomers, farmers, and architects on a grand scale. And then they were gone. By the middle of the 15th century, the great city of Moundville was abandoned. The mound stood empty, the plaza fell silent. The question of why is one of the deepest puzzles in American archaeology. What could cause such a sophisticated society to simply walk away from their monumental capital? Did a prolonged drought strain their agricultural system? Did internal conflict or rebellion topple the ruling elite? Perhaps a new spiritual movement called them to disperse, or a devastating epidemic swept through the population. The evidence is fragmentary and open to interpretation. We see signs of a gradual decline, not a sudden catastrophic end. The true reason remains locked within the very soil they once moved with such purpose. Moundville's silence is not an absence of history, but a profound mystery, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can vanish, leaving behind only their earthworks as a question mark against the horizon. The sheer scale of these earthworks forces a single haunting question. What exactly were they for? We know some served as foundations for the homes of chiefs or temples for priests, lifting the elite and the sacred literally closer to the heavens. But the true purpose of these mounds extends far beyond simple architecture. It is written in the language of the sun and the stars. Certain mounds and the Grand Plaza itself are aligned with celestial precision. At key moments like the summer and winter solstices, the sun would rise or set in perfect alignment with specific mounds, casting long, deliberate shadows or bathing particular structures in light. This was not accidental. It reveals a society of astronomer priests who wove the cycles of the cosmos directly into the fabric of their city. The entire layout of Moundville can be seen as a giant earthen calendar and a map of their spiritual universe. The treasures found within the mounds deepen the mystery. Beneath some of these great platforms, archaeologists have discovered elaborate burials. High-status individuals were laid to rest with astonishing wealth from across the continent, like copper from the Great Lakes, mica from the Appalachians, and shells from the Gulf. These were not just grave goods, they were passports for the afterlife, symbols of power, and proof of a far-reaching trade network controlled by a powerful ruling class. The presence of these exotic items tells us of a complex social hierarchy, but the rituals that accompanied these burials are lost to time. What ceremonies were performed on those flat summits under the open sky? What songs were chanted, what stories told as the smoke from sacred fires drifted over the plaza? Were the mounds themselves seen as portals to the spirit world, or as representations of the tears of their cosmology? We are left with the physical evidence of profound belief, but the meaning behind it remains just out of reach. The mounds are a permanent question. They represent an immense investment of labor and faith, all directed toward a vision we can no longer fully see. Every basket of earth carried was an act of devotion, every alignment a prayer made solid. The full scope of the rituals, the precise nature of the gods they worshipped, and the spiritual experiences that motivated this decades-long construction project are secrets the mounds keep locked within their soil. We see the magnificent footprint of their belief, but the living, breathing faith that created it has vanished, leaving us with a silent, monumental riddle. While the silent mounds speak of a lost local world, another Alabama artifact whispers of a far more distant and impossible journey. This is the enigma of the Alabama stone. The story begins in the late 1800s when a large inscribed sandstone slab was reportedly unearthed by a farmer in the northern part of the state. The stone itself was substantial, and its surface was covered with rows of strange, deeply carved characters. These were not random scratches. To some early observers, the markings bore a startling resemblance to ancient writing systems from across the Atlantic, specifically scripts used in ancient Iberia or Libya. The implication was as radical as it was simple, and it sent shockwaves through certain circles. Could this stone be physical proof of pre-Columbian contact, evidence that explorers from the Mediterranean world had reached the heart of Alabama centuries, even millennia before Columbus? Proponents of this theory saw the stone as a smoking gun, a forgotten marker left by Phoenician, Carthaginian, or other Old World voyagers who sailed across the ocean and ventured deep into the North American interior. They argued the inscriptions were a deliberate record, a message carved for others who might follow. The very idea challenges the textbook narrative of history, suggesting a much more interconnected ancient world. But from the moment it surfaced, the stone was mired in controversy. Skeptics and mainstream archaeologists presented a very different interpretation. They suggested the markings might be a unique but purely indigenous form of petroglyph, a set of symbols created by Native Americans that simply bore a coincidental, superficial likeness to Old World alphabets. Without context, without other similar artifacts found nearby, they argued it was a case of hopeful misinterpretation. The third and perhaps most damning possibility was that the entire thing was an elaborate 19th century hoax. The era was rife with archaeological forgeries and romantic speculation about lost civilizations. Could someone have crafted the stone to garner attention, to sell a story, or to support a fringe historical theory? The debate raged, but it was a debate conducted in the shadows, because the Alabama stone itself performed a final, frustrating, vanishing act. After a few decades of study and argument, the physical artifact disappeared from public view. It was lost, misplaced, or perhaps even deliberately hidden. Today, no reputable museum or institution holds it. We are left with only drawings, descriptions, and photographs of questionable quality. This loss transforms the stone from a mere artifact into a true ghost. Its absence fuels the mystery infinitely more than its presence ever could. Without the original to subject to modern scientific analysis, we cannot definitively settle the argument. Is it a profound historical clue, a native artwork, or a clever fake? The Alabama stone remains an open question, a tantalizing and maddening blank space in the record where a solid answer should be. Its story is a perfect echo of Alabama's archaeological landscape, where the evidence has a haunting tendency to slip through our fingers just as we think we understand it. The mystery of lost artifacts is profound, but some enigmas are built into the very bones of the landscape. Far from the great earthen mounds of central Alabama, in the state's northeastern corner where the terrain grows rugged and forested, a different kind of ancient puzzle waits atop a place called Fort Mountain. Here, winding along the crest like a petrified serpent, is a wall of stone. It is not a towering fortress, but a low, sinuous line roughly 885 feet long, painstakingly assembled from local rock without a trace of mortar to hold it together. Who built this isolated, laborious structure on a remote mountaintop, and more importantly, why the wall itself offers no inscription, no buried treasures, only its silent, snaking presence? This has led to a century's worth of competing theories, each more intriguing than the last. The most widely accepted explanation points to Native American builders, possibly ancestors of the Cherokee or earlier groups. It could have been a defensive barrier, a place to make a final stand against enemies, though its low height makes that function questionable. Alternatively, it might have served a ceremonial purpose, perhaps defining a sacred space high above the mundane world, a place for vision quests or rituals aligned with the mountain winds. But another far more romantic theory has clung stubbornly to this wall for generations. It is the legend of Prince Madoc, a Welsh explorer who, according to folklore, sailed to the New World in the 12th century, long before Columbus. Proponents suggest the wall was built by Madoc or his followers as a defensive outpost, a piece of medieval Wales transplanted to the Alabama wilderness. This theory is often intertwined with tales of the Moon-Eyed People, a mysterious race from Cherokee oral tradition described as light-skinned, bearded and unable to see well in daylight, who were said to have inhabited the region long ago. Could these have been Welsh colonists? Mainstream archaeology finds no solid evidence for this, no artifacts like European tools or coins from the period, but the legend persists as a tantalizing what if. The frustrating truth is that the Fort Mountain Wall is an orphan. It does not neatly fit the patterns of any well-documented local culture, nor does it provide clear proof of foreign visitors. It stands alone, a cryptic sentence written in stone on a mountaintop, its grammar lost to time. We are left to wonder if it was a practical fortification, a spiritual pathway, or the lonely monument of a lost band of explorers dreaming of a home they could never see again. The wall does not answer, it only exists, a permanent question mark laid across the ridgeline. While stone walls stand silent on mountaintops, other secrets are said to hide in the darkness below. The Coosa River, a winding artery through the heart of Alabama, holds whispers of a subterranean world. For generations, stories have circulated among locals, early settlers, and adventurous explorers about something far more intricate than simple caves. They speak of the Coosa River catacombs, vast networks of man-made tunnels and chambers carved from the earth along the river's basin. These are not just tales of dark holes in the ground, but of engineered spaces. Reports describe smooth walls, squared-off passages, and rooms that seem too regular, too deliberate to be the work of random erosion. Some accounts even mention artifacts within these depths, strange carvings on the walls, or the chilling discovery of bones and pottery fragments in niches that feel like burial alcoves. The legends paint a picture of an entire hidden landscape, a secret counterpart to the great mounds above. It is an irresistible idea that the Mississippian builders, or perhaps an even earlier culture, might have created sacred spaces underground, away from the sun, for rituals we cannot fathom or to protect their most valued dead. These could have been initiation chambers, places of communion with underworld spirits, or secure vaults for ceremonial objects. The thought of torchlight flickering against carved walls deep beneath the Alabama soil is a powerful image. Yet when we bring these stories into the light of modern archaeology, they often seem to dissolve. Mainstream researchers approach such tales with deep skepticism. The Coosa River region is karst country, rich with limestone that is naturally dissolved by water over millennia, creating extensive cave systems, sinkholes, and complex grottos. What a modern explorer might perceive as a man-made tunnel could very well be a beautifully sculpted natural passage. The human mind is exceptionally good at finding patterns, especially in the dim and unsettling environment of a cave. A water-smoothed wall can look intentionally worked. A cluster of fallen rocks might appear arranged, without clear, unambiguous artifacts found in situ by professionals or distinct tool marks on the stone. These stories are relegated to the realm of folklore. They are often dismissed as the products of wishful thinking, a desire to find lost civilizations and hidden treasure where none exist. But here is where the mystery truly endures, in the stubborn gap between official record and persistent rumor. Could every single account from different times and different people be entirely mistaken? Is it possible that some of these natural caves were modified and used by ancient peoples, their alterations now indistinguishable from nature's work after centuries of decay? The frustrating truth is that proving a negative is impossible. We cannot definitively say there are no undiscovered ritual spaces hidden along the Coosa, just as we cannot prove there are. The river keeps its secrets, guarding the threshold between geology and history, The legend of the catacombs persists because it speaks to a deeper truth about this land, a sense that for all the mounds we have mapped, there are still layers of the past we have not yet learned to see, waiting in the quiet dark. From the whispers of lost tunnels, we move to a historical mystery that burned so brightly it was erased from the map. The search for the lost city of Moundville is a quest for a ghost, a pivotal moment in American history that vanished into the Alabama soil. In October of 1540, the Spanish conquistador Hernando de Soto, leading a weary and armored expedition deep into the unknown interior, encountered the formidable chief Tuscaloosa. The chief, described as an imposing figure of great authority, invited De Soto to visit his principal town, a place called Mabilla or Moundville. What De Soto and his men found there shocked them. It was not a simple village, but a large, heavily fortified settlement with a stout wooden palisade and towers situated in a cleared plain. Inside, hundreds, perhaps thousands of Tuscaloosa's warriors waited, hidden. The invitation had been a trap. What followed was a day of ferocious, close-quarters combat, one of the bloodiest battles of the entire De Soto expedition. The Spanish, though outnumbered, eventually fought their way out, but at a terrible cost. In the chaos, they set the town ablaze. Historical accounts describe a holocaust, with the entire fortified city consumed by fire, the flames claiming both Spanish supplies and, tragically, countless Native American lives, including many who were trapped inside the burning walls. When the smoke cleared, Moundville was gone, reduced to ash and memory. This was not just a battle, it was a catastrophic first contact, a moment of profound collision between two worlds. And then the land simply swallowed it. For centuries, the exact location of Moundville has been one of the South's most compelling archaeological riddles. The search has spanned decades and crossed multiple Alabama counties from Clark to Dallas, Monroe to Wilcox. Historians and archaeologists have pored over the vague Spanish diaries, trying to match descriptions of travel distances, river crossings, and terrain to the modern landscape. Each proposed site offers tantalizing clues, a scatter of 16th century Spanish artifacts here, evidence of a large settlement there, or the remnants of a palisade. But none have provided the definitive, undeniable proof, the clear combination of massive fortification, evidence of a colossal fire, and Spanish artifacts from the exact year 1540. The challenge is immense. The fire itself would have destroyed much. Wooden palisades leave only faint stains in the earth, and centuries of plowing and erosion have reshaped the land. Finding Moundville is like looking for a specific charred needle in a vast historical haystack. This lost location is more than a missing dot on a map. It represents a lost chapter in the continent's story. Pinpointing Moundville would ground a legendary confrontation in reality, giving us the very soil on which this dramatic struggle unfolded. It would allow us to understand the scale of Tuscaloosa's resistance and the true cost of De Soto's march. Without it, a pivotal event remains suspended in the realm of text, a story without a stage. The search continues, a quiet detective story played out with shovels, ground-penetrating radar, and fragile hope, all aimed at finding the ashes of a city that once defied an empire. Even fire leaves a trace, but some messages are carved to endure. In the quiet woodlands of western Alabama, far from the river basins and ancient mounds, another kind of record waits on weathered sandstone outcrops. These are the Pickens County petroglyphs, a gallery of ancient art left in the open air. The images are not painted. They are pecked, painstakingly hammered into the stone surface with a harder rock, one deliberate tap at a time. The patterns are haunting in their simplicity and variety. You find concentric circles like ripples from a stone dropped in still water, spreading out from a central point. There are clear, unmistakable footprints, as if someone walked across the rock and left a permanent impression. Stylized human figures stand with arms raised, and intricate abstract symbols weave lines and curves and patterns that feel both deliberate and cryptic. These carvings were almost certainly the work of Native American artists, created over a span of centuries, perhaps even millennia, long before European contact. They are not random doodles. The effort required to create them, the selection of specific rock faces, tells us they held deep significance. But what do they mean? This is the silent heart of the mystery. Without a living tradition to explain them, we are left with educated guesses that feel more like poetry than proof. The concentric circles could be maps of the cosmos, symbols of the sun, or diagrams of sacred spaces. The footprints might mark a trail, signify a journey taken by a spiritual leader, or represent the presence of a deity who walked there. The human figures could be portraits of ancestors, depictions of shamans in ritual trance, or spirits from the other world. Some researchers look at the arrangement of symbols and wonder if there are records of celestial events, marking the passage of a comet or the patterns of star clusters. Others see clan symbols, territorial markers, or signs pointing towards sources of water or special medicinal plants. Each interpretation is plausible, yet none can be confirmed. This is the profound challenge of archaeology when it is divorced from language. We have the vocabulary, but we have lost the grammar. We can see the words, but we cannot read the sentence. The petroglyphs are a beautiful, enduring puzzle precisely because they are not hidden in a tomb or buried in a mound. They are out in the open, an intentional public statement meant to be seen, perhaps for generations. Yet the audience they were meant for is gone, and we are left as outsiders trying to understand a conversation we arrived too late to hear. The stone holds the message perfectly, but the key has turned to dust. The silent language of stone speaks again in the way the dead were laid to rest. Scattered across the limestone-rich hills of northern Alabama, archaeologists have uncovered graves of a uniquely tangible kind. These are the stone box graves, a burial practice as simple in concept as it is profound in execution. Instead of a plain earthen pit, the body was placed in a carefully constructed cist. Workers would select thin, flat slabs of the local limestone, using them to line the bottom and sides of the grave, creating a crude but unmistakable box within the earth. A final, larger slab would then be placed on top as a lid, sealing the individual inside a personal chamber of stone. This was not a haphazard act. It represented a significant investment of effort, a deliberate choice to separate the deceased from the surrounding soil with a permanent, geometric barrier. These graves are generally associated with the late Woodland and Mississippian periods, spanning several centuries leading up to and including the time of the great mound builders. Yet their presence creates a puzzle of identity and meaning. Who earned this distinct form of burial? One prevailing theory suggests these stone boxes were reserved for elite individuals, perhaps village leaders, revered elders, or skilled artisans. The extra labor required to quarry, transport, and fit the stones could signify the community's respect for the person's status, a final earthly monument to their importance. The stone box itself might have been seen as a protective vessel, safeguarding the individual's journey to the afterlife, or physically preserving their remains in a way simple earth could not. But the distribution of these graves complicates a simple elite theory. They are found in several sites, but not universally. Were they instead the signature of a specific clan or ethnic group moving through the region, a people who carried this funerary tradition with them like a cultural fingerprint? Or was it a widespread practice that simply fell in and out of fashion over the centuries, used for a time and then abandoned as beliefs evolved? The stone offers no clear hierarchy. Some boxes contain rich grave goods like shell beads or fine pottery, supporting the elite idea. Others hold little more than the skeleton itself, suggesting perhaps the practice was more about a shared spiritual belief than social rank. The ritual importance is undeniable. The act of constructing the box transforms the grave from a mere hole into an architecture of eternity. It creates a defined, human-made space for the dead, a final house. But what was the spiritual reasoning? Did the limestone slab serve as a barrier to keep the spirit contained, or to protect it from malevolent forces? Was the enclosed space meant to symbolize a return to the womb of the earth, or to provide a stable vessel for a spirit that might need to find its way back? Each slab placed was a sentence in a ritual we can no longer read. When the final capstone was set, it did more than cover the grave, it sealed away the answers. Today, these silent stone boxes are like locked diaries. We can see the care with which they were made, we can map where they lie, and we can sometimes see what was placed inside. But the crucial story of why this particular person, in this particular place, was granted this particular house of stone is a secret kept between the deceased, their community, and the enduring limestone itself. The silent stone boxes hold the dead, but other relics seem to speak of impossible arrivals. Along the winding path of the Tennessee River, in the area known as the Wheeler Basin, A different kind of mystery surfaced in the early 20th century. It began with reports of strange objects unearthed by local workers, farmers, and even amateur archaeologists digging in the rich river soil. The most famous of these curiosities is often called the Battersea Crate, named for a location near the river. According to the stories, a wooden crate or chest was discovered buried in the earth, and inside was a collection that defied all logic. The contents were said to include ancient coins, some bearing markings that looked distinctly Roman, along with other metallic objects and artifacts that seemed utterly out of place in prehistoric Alabama. The implications were explosive. If true, these items suggested direct physical contact with the classical world of the Mediterranean, centuries before any known European expedition. It was a story that could shatter the conventional timeline of New World history, hinting at forgotten voyages by Roman galleys or other ancient mariners who sailed up the great rivers of North America and left behind tangible proof of their journey. For those who believed the Wheeler Basin relics were not just artifacts, they were keys to a hidden chapter of global connection. The controversy that erupted was immediate and fierce. Mainstream archaeologists and historians subjected the finds to intense scrutiny, and the consensus was overwhelmingly skeptical. They proposed several far more plausible explanations. First, many of the objects could have been misidentified Native American artifacts. A shaped piece of native copper or a carved stone might, to an untrained eye, resemble something from the Old World. Second, and more damning, was the strong possibility of hoax. The early 1900s were a golden age for archaeological fakers and sensational newspaper stories. Creating a convincing crate of curiosities and planting it for discovery was entirely within the realm of possibility for a prankster or someone seeking fame. Third, there was the problem of context. Items can become buried in older layers through natural processes like flooding or through the activities of later peoples. A coin lost by a 19th century settler could, over decades, sink into soil layers that appear much older. Without a documented professional excavation where every item is carefully mapped in situ, the provenance of these relics is hopelessly compromised. For the archaeological establishment, the Wheeler Basin finds are a closed case, a classic example of why rigorous scientific method is essential. Yet for mystery enthusiasts and proponents of alternative history, the dismissal itself feels like part of the puzzle. They argue that orthodox science is too quick to reject anomalies that challenge its frameworks, that the desire to protect a settled narrative can blind us to genuine outliers. The relics, whether real or not, represent the enduring human desire to find evidence of a more adventurous, interconnected ancient past. They are a testament to the power of a what-if, a story so compelling it persists long after the evidence has been questioned. In the end, the Wheeler Basin relics exist in a shadowy realm between fact and folklore. They are less about the objects themselves, which may be lost or misattributed, and more about the stories we tell to fill the gaps in our understanding. They remind us that history is not just a record of what we know, but also a landscape haunted by the ghosts of possibilities we cannot prove. Deep in the shadowed heart of the William B. Bankhead National Forest, the earth tells a different kind of story. Here, far from rivers and ancient plazas, the mystery is woven into the landscape itself, one stone at a time. Hikers following remote trails sometimes stumble upon them, lines of moss-covered rock that seem to emerge from the forest floor. These are the ghost walls of Bankhead. They are not grand or imposing. Most are primitive constructions, often just a single stone in height, painstakingly stacked without mortar to form long, meandering lines or rough, circular enclosures. They snake through the hollows and over ridges, following the logic of a forgotten map. Their very simplicity is what makes them so perplexing. Who built these walls, and for what possible purpose in such a dense and difficult wilderness? The most straightforward explanation points to the 19th century settlers who first carved homesteads from this forest. These low lines could be the remnants of property boundaries, marking the rough edges of a hard-won farm. Or perhaps they were pens for livestock, built to contain sheep or hogs foraging in the woods. In this light, the walls are relics of pioneer grit, a testament to the backbreaking labor of clearing land and claiming a piece of the frontier. Yet something about this explanation feels incomplete to many who walk among them. The walls often appear in areas that seem ill-suited for farming or grazing, in places too remote or topographically challenging for practical settlement. This has led researchers to propose a far more ancient origin. Could these be prehistoric structures? One compelling theory suggests they might have served as hunting blinds. Indigenous hunters could have used these low stone lines as concealment, crouching behind them to ambush deer or other game that followed natural trails through the forest. Another possibility is that they were territorial markers, not to claim ownership in a modern sense, but to signify a clan's habitual hunting grounds or a spiritually significant area. The construction method offers no clear clue, as stacking available stone is a universal human solution across millennia. The dense forest which has protected these walls from the plow and modern development has also erased the context that would solve the riddle. No artifacts are reliably associated with them, no pottery shards or projectile points left behind as a signature. They exist in a historical vacuum, a silent architecture absorbed by the woods. So a hiker today is left with a tangible physical puzzle. You can run your hand over the cool, damp stones, feeling the friction where they were lifted and set by human hands. But were those hands callous from pioneer axes or from shaping stone tools centuries earlier? The forest holds its breath around these quiet lines, keeping the secret of whether they are the fading scars of a settler's claim or the enduring signature of a people who moved through this land long before it was ever called a national forest. Each stone is a word in a sentence we can no longer read, a message from the past that has outlasted its own meaning. While the forest walls speak a silent language, other stones seem to promise a clear, decipherable message. The story of the Tuscumbia stone tablets is a chapter written in equal parts intrigue and skepticism. In the late 1800s, reports surfaced from the area around Tuscumbia in northwest Alabama. According to accounts, local workers or farmers had unearthed a set of flat stone slabs, and these were no ordinary rocks. Their surfaces were said to be covered in rows of intricate carved glyphs, strange symbols, arranged with a deliberate, linear order that looked for all the world like a form of ancient writing. The initial excitement was palpable. Here, far from any known literate civilization of the ancient Americas, was what appeared to be a record, a text. Speculation ran wild. The most popular theory suggested the tablets documented an ancient transoceanic voyage, perhaps a chronicle carved by lost Phoenician or Hebrew explorers who had traversed the continent and left their story in the Alabama soil. It was a narrative that fit perfectly with the romantic spirit of the age, a tangible piece of evidence that could rewrite the history books and prove the continent had known old world visitors long before Columbus. The tablets were presented as a key to unlocking a hidden past, a direct line of communication from a forgotten chapter of human migration. This promise, however, quickly collided with the emerging discipline of professional archaeology. When academics and trained antiquarians examined the claims, their verdict was harsh and nearly unanimous. The so-called Tuscumbia tablets were dismissed, and the reasons were compelling. First, there was the problem of the objects themselves. Many experts argued the markings were not human-made inscriptions at all, but the result of natural weathering. Sandstone in particular can fracture and erode in fantastically linear patterns that, to a hopeful eye, can resemble writing. The human brain is wired to find patterns, especially familiar ones like letters, in random shapes. Pareidolia, the tendency to see faces in clouds or animals in rock formations, could easily explain the phenomenon. Second, and more damning, was the strong suspicion of outright forgery. The 19th century was a golden age for archaeological hoaxes. From the Cardiff giant to countless curious stones, there was a booming market for artifacts that fed the public's appetite for mystery and alternative history. Creating a set of inscribed tablets and planting them for discovery required minimal skill but offered maximum attention. Without a documented, scientific excavation to establish provenance, the tablets were scientifically worthless. The academic world largely turned its back, and the physical tablets, like so many of these curiosities, faded from view, likely lost or discarded. This leads us to the deeper, more fascinating layer of the mystery. Why did stories like this of inscribed stones bearing mysterious writing emerge so frequently in 1800s Alabama? The Tuscumbia case was not an isolated incident, it was part of a pattern. This was a period of intense national and regional identity formation. the young United States and the newly established state of Alabama were searching for a deep, glorious past to rival the ancient histories of Europe and the Mediterranean. There was a powerful desire to prove the continent had been home to great, sophisticated civilizations, or had been visited by the legendary peoples of the Old World. Finding a stone with strange writing offered a shortcut to that dignity. It was a way to claim a place in the grand narrative of human history, to assert that this land was not a blank slate, but a stage for epic, forgotten journeys. These stone tablet stories are less about archaeology and more about psychology and culture. They represent the yearning to find meaning in the landscape, to connect the new world to the old, and to fill the silent gaps of prehistory with a story we can read. The Tuscumbia tablets, whether natural oddities or clever fakes, are ultimately a reflection of that profound human need. They remind us that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are not about what is buried in the ground, but about what we desperately hope to find there. The desire for a glorious past often focused on words, but true power in ancient Alabama was measured in gleaming metal. Among the most astonishing treasures unearthed from the great mounds are objects not of stone or clay, but of copper. These are not crude lumps of raw ore. Archaeologists have recovered exquisitely crafted ear spools, wide and delicate, designed to stretch the lobes of an elite personage. They have found ceremonial axes, their blades thin and symbolic rather than functional, and ornate decorative plates embossed with intricate designs of birds, serpents, and cosmic symbols. This artistry speaks of a society with sophisticated metalworking techniques, people who knew how to cold hammer raw copper into breathtaking forms, to anneal it with heat, and to create objects that captured and reflected the light like nothing else in their world. But this brilliance presents an immediate and profound puzzle. Alabama has no native copper deposits. Not a single vein of the pure, malleable metal exists anywhere within the state's modern borders. Every flake, every ornament, every ceremonial axe had to come from somewhere else. This fact transforms a beautiful artifact into a piece of a much larger map. The closest major source of this kind of pure float copper is the Lake Superior region, nearly 1,000 miles to the north. The journey of a single copper ear spool from the icy shores of the Great Lakes to the warm soil of Moundville is a story of epic proportions. It tells us that the Mississippian world was not isolated. It was connected by a vast invisible web of trade routes that moved not just goods, but ideas, rituals, and status across staggering distances. Think of the logistics. This raw copper, likely in nugget or ingot form, would have been carried by foot, possibly by canoe along river systems, passing through countless hands and communities over months or even years. It was a commodity of immense value long before it ever reached a master artisan's hands in Alabama. The very presence of this copper is proof of diplomacy, of established exchange partnerships, and of a shared cultural value system that stretched across half a continent. What did these objects mean to the people who finally received them? They were far more than mere decoration. In a world where most tools and ornaments were made from local stone, bone, or wood, a gleaming copper plate was a shock of the exotic. It was a physical manifestation of connection to a distant and powerful realm. Possessing such an item, or being buried with it, was a definitive statement of social standing. It signaled that an individual or a lineage had the wealth, the influence, and the far-reaching relationships to command such a rare material. These were likely items of supreme ritual importance, used in ceremonies that affirmed the authority of chiefs and priests, perhaps believed to hold spiritual power borrowed from the distant lands of its origin. The copper itself may have been seen as sacred, a piece of the earth's metallic heart. When we hold one of these artifacts today, we are not just holding a metal object. We are holding the endpoint of an ancient supply chain, the culmination of a 1,000-mile journey of trust and trade. It is a frozen fragment of conversation between cultures who will never know each other's names. The mystery is not just about where the copper came from, but about the human network that made its journey possible. A network so sophisticated and resilient that it could deliver a piece of another world to the leaders of Alabama's mound-building civilization, connecting their sacred plazas to the distant northern lakes in a bond of shining, silent metal. The gleaming copper from the north tells of distant mountains, but to understand Alabama's ancient past, we must also listen to the whispers of the sea. Travel south now to where the land dissolves into a maze of slow-moving water and towering cypress. This is the Mobile Tensaw Delta, a vast wetland that empties into the Gulf of Mexico. Here, the monuments are not built of earth or stone, but of life itself. Scattered along the waterways and coast are massive, sprawling mounds constructed almost entirely from discarded oyster and clam shells. These are not random trash heaps, they are the engineered foundations of a civilization that mastered an aquatic world. The most stunning example is the Bottle Creek Mounds, a remote complex situated on a low island deep within the swamp. Reaching it even today requires a boat and a determined guide. Imagine arriving there centuries ago, paddling through silent, tea-colored water and emerging into a clearing to see over a dozen earthen platforms, some towering more than 45 feet high, their cores packed with countless shells. This was not a seasonal camp, it was a major ceremonial and political center, a city built on shellfish, rising from the water to defy the floods. The sheer volume of material is staggering. These shell middens represent generations of daily meals, the accumulated harvest of hundreds of thousands of bushels of oysters and clams, but their purpose was brilliantly practical. In a flooded landscape where dry ground was precious, these shell mounds served as elevated living platforms. They raised homes, temples, and communal spaces above the soggy earth and seasonal high water. The shells themselves, when packed together, created a stable, well-drained foundation that resisted erosion. This was architecture born from necessity and abundance, a perfect adaptation to a rich coastal environment. The mystery lies in the scale of the operation and the society behind it. To create mounds of this size required more than just eating a lot of oysters. It demanded a highly organized, coordinated effort. This suggests a complex social structure with leaders who could mobilize and direct labor over long periods. Did entire clans have designated shell-gathering territories? Were there rituals or festivals centered around the building of a new platform? The society that built Bottle Creek was clearly managing its resources and its people with sophisticated foresight. They were not just hunter-gatherers, they were landscape engineers on a grand scale, sculpting their watery world into a habitable domain. Then, as with the great inland mounds, this chapter too came to a close. The sites were abandoned. What could cause a people so perfectly adapted to their environment to leave their shell-built citadels? The answer may be written in the very layers of the mounds themselves. A gradual change in the coastline, perhaps a shift in the salinity of the bays, could have devastated the oyster beds that were the literal bedrock of their society. A series of catastrophic hurricanes, more powerful than any in living memory, might have repeatedly scoured the islands, making rebuilding seem futile. Or perhaps it was a slow social unraveling as trade networks shifted or internal conflicts fractured their cohesion. The silent shell piles hold a record of more than just diet. They are a climate archive and a social ledger. Each layer is a snapshot of a time when the water was just right, the harvest was plentiful, and a community came together to build their future from the remains of their meals. To stand atop one of these mounds today is to feel the ghost of that rhythm, the endless cycle of harvest and construction that once made the swamp feel like home. We are left to wonder about the final meal, the last oyster shucked before the community decided, for reasons we can only guess, to paddle away and never return. From the watery world of shell mounds, we return to the heart of the inland empire and to an object of singular power. In the shadow of the great platform at Moundville, archaeologists uncovered an artifact that seems to concentrate the entire mystery of that lost civilization into one gleaming form. It is known simply as the Moundville copper axe. This is no ordinary hand tool. It is a masterpiece of ritual metalwork, a large, thin blade of cold hammered copper, shaped with astonishing symmetry and mounted on a long, elegant handle that would have been wrapped in hide or fabric. Its size alone commands attention, far larger than any practical axe used for chopping wood. The blade is expansive and ceremonial, designed not for the violence of the forest, but for the theater of the sacred plaza. To hold it, you would feel its perfect balance, a weight that speaks of authority rather than labor. But this beautiful object presents a profound riddle. What was its true purpose? On the surface, it takes the form of a weapon, a symbol of martial might. It could have been a badge of office for a war chief, a physical embodiment of the power to defend the city or conquer its enemies. Yet its thin, fragile construction suggests it was never meant to strike a blow. This leads to a more spiritual interpretation. Perhaps it was a tool of ritual sacrifice used in ceremonies to consecrate offerings. its blade symbolically severing the connection between this world and the next. Or maybe it represented a mythological concept, a thunderbolt from the gods or a fragment of the sun itself, wielded by a priest king to channel divine power. The most compelling clue to its meaning lies in its final state. Like many such supreme objects, this axe was ritually killed before it was laid to rest. This was a common practice across the ancient world. A precious item, often associated with a specific person or office, would be deliberately damaged or rendered unusable, bent, broken, or in this case, the blade carefully folded. This was not an act of disrespect, but the opposite. It was a sacred decommissioning. By killing the object, its spiritual essence was released to accompany its owner into the afterlife. It also prevented the tangible symbol of power from being used by anyone else, effectively retiring the authority it represented. So this folded copper axe is more than an artifact, it is a frozen moment in a high-stakes ritual. We can almost see the scene. In the plaza before the Great Mound, a solemn figure performs the final act, bending the gleaming blade with deliberate ceremony before placing it in the grave of a paramount leader. It encapsulates everything: the far-flung trade networks that brought the raw copper, the elite artisans who shaped it, the spiritual beliefs that animated it, and the political structure that justified its existence. Yet the precise words of the chant spoken as it was folded, the exact nature of the god or ancestor to whom it was offered, the specific title of the leader it honored, these details are lost. The axe is a perfect sentence from a lost language, its grammar clear, its vocabulary beautiful, but its full meaning just beyond our grasp. It rests in a museum case now, a silent ambassador from a world where metal gleamed with the light of both the sun and the soul. Deep beneath the sunlit world of mounds and rivers, another art form survives in the perpetual dark. Alabama's limestone bedrock is riddled with caverns, and within these silent chambers, ancient artists left their marks not on open cliffs, but on the walls of sacred, subterranean spaces. This is the world of Alabama cave art, a fragile and deeply personal gallery. Here you will find two distinct types of expression. Pictographs or images painted onto the stone, often using mixtures of red ochre, charcoal, or white clay. These can appear as bold, sweeping shapes or delicate figures. Petroglyphs, on the other hand, are carved or pecked directly into the rock surface, their lines enduring through the centuries. The subjects are hauntingly familiar yet mysterious. You might see the outline of a deer or a bird, its form captured in a few elegant lines. Abstract geometric patterns, zigzags, concentric circles, grids spread across the walls like cryptic code. And perhaps most intimate of all are the handprints, created by placing a hand against the wall and blowing or daubing pigment around it, leaving a stark, personal silhouette that shouts, "I was here," across thousands of years. A prime example lies within Russell Cave, a site used for millennia as a shelter. Its walls hold these ancient signatures, but why venture into the total darkness of a cave to create art? Practical light from a torch or a grease lamp would have been fleeting, making the act itself a dedicated ritual. This suggests these were not casual doodles. These caverns were likely sacred spaces set apart from the everyday world above. They may have been used for vision quests where individuals sought spiritual encounters through solitude, fasting, and prayer in the darkness. The act of painting or carving could have been a way to record a powerful vision, a spirit animal met in a trance, a map of the cosmos received from the ancestors, or a prayer for hunting success. The handprints might signify initiation, a rite of passage marking one's entry into a clan or a spiritual society. Each image is a frozen moment of profound personal experience. The mystery deepens when we consider the incredible preservation of these works. The stable, cool, and dark environment of a cave acts as a perfect time capsule, protecting the pigments from sun and rain that would have erased similar art outside. Yet this preservation is tragically fragile. The mere breath of modern visitors, introducing moisture and microbes, can start a slow process of degradation. These artworks survive for millennia in silence, only to face new threats now that we have found them. Their survival is a race against time, making their study all the more urgent. To unlock their meaning, researchers employ tools like archaeoastronomy, studying how ancient peoples understood celestial events. In some caves, they look for specific alignments. Could a shaft of sunlight, piercing the cave entrance only on the morning of the summer solstice, illuminate a particular painted symbol on the back wall. Such a discovery would transform a cave from a simple gallery into a calibrated celestial calendar, a place where the sun itself participated in the ritual, lighting up a sacred image on the longest day of the year. While such precise alignments are difficult to prove, the possibility reminds us that every element, the choice of cave, the placement of the image, the subject matter, was likely intentional. Standing before a red ochre handprint in the beam of a flashlight is an unnervingly direct encounter. That negative space is where a living hand once rested. The pigment is the very material they mixed and breathed upon. In these dark galleries, the gap of centuries momentarily collapses. We are not looking at a ruin or an artifact removed from its context. We are sharing the same physical space, the same wall that the artist faced. We see what they saw, even if we cannot fully grasp the story they needed to tell. The caves hold the echo of a thought, a prayer, or a vision, rendered in simple lines and colors. They are the most intimate whispers of Alabama's ancient past, spoken not in words, but in the language of memory and belief, waiting in the dark for a light to understand them. The vibrant world of the mound builders did not end with a single cataclysm, but faded like a long sunset. By the time Spanish explorers like Hernando de Soto marched through the southeast in the 16th century, the great ceremonial centers like Moundville were already silent, their grand plazas empty of the processions and rituals that once defined them. The Mississippian civilization, which had thrived for nearly 500 years, had undergone a profound transformation, dispersing into smaller, more mobile communities. This disappearance is the ultimate mystery that hangs over all the other puzzles, the question that ties the silent mounds and abandoned cities together. What could cause such a sophisticated and powerful society to fragment and recede? Scholars point to a perfect storm of pressures, a combination that likely proved too much for their complex social structure to bear. One of the most compelling suspects is a changing climate. Tree ring data from the period reveals evidence of a prolonged and severe drought, a megadrought that may have lasted for decades in the 14th and 15th centuries. For a civilization built on maize agriculture, a series of failed harvests would have been catastrophic. The social contract that bound people to their chiefs, the promise of food and stability in return for labor and loyalty, would have frayed and then snapped. Imagine the growing desperation as the rains failed year after year and the once fertile fields around the great mounds produced less and less. This environmental stress could have led directly to a second theory: resource depletion and overpopulation. The very success of cities like Moundville may have sown the seeds of their downfall. As populations grew, they would have needed to clear more land for farming, hunt game from increasingly distant forests, and place greater demands on the local environment. The land pushed to its limit may have simply been unable to support such concentrated numbers, especially when the climate turned against them. This scarcity would have fueled a third possibility: intense social and political conflict. When the authority of the priest chiefs could no longer guarantee a good harvest or divine favor, their power would have crumbled. Competing factions within society may have risen up, leading to internal warfare, rebellion, or a simple loss of faith in the entire hierarchical system. People may have voluntarily chosen to leave the grand cities, dispersing into smaller, more resilient family groups that were better suited to a scarcer, less predictable world. Finally, there is the haunting specter of disease. Even before sustained face-to-face contact with Europeans, their pathogens may have traveled far ahead of them through indigenous trade networks. Diseases like smallpox or influenza, to which Native Americans had no immunity, could have swept through densely populated ceremonial centers like wildfire, devastating populations and collapsing social order in a terrifyingly short time. The truth is, it was almost certainly a combination of these factors. A severe drought weakens the food supply, which sparks social unrest and challenges to authority, making the population vulnerable to any introduced illness. The exact sequence, the tipping point, remains lost to us. The disappearance was not an extinction, but a dramatic cultural reorganization. The descendants of the Mississippians are the historic Native American tribes of the Southeast, like the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek, who carried forward many cultural traditions but lived in a very different political world. This transformation makes the fate of the mound builders not a simple story of collapse, but a complex lesson in resilience and adaptation. Yet the scale of what was left behind, those monumental earthworks that required generations of unified effort, stands as a permanent testament to what they once achieved, and a silent question about the fragile foundations of even the greatest civilizations. This final artistic flourish is captured in the delicate curves of clay. As the great Mississippian world began to change, a new and stunning pottery style emerged in the coastal regions of southern Alabama, particularly around the Mobile Delta. Archaeologists call it the Pensacola culture pottery, with a specific exquisite variant known as the Claiborne style. This was not simple, utilitarian ware. These were vessels of ceremony and display, often bottles or bowls with elegant, carinated shoulders, their surfaces transformed into canvases. The artistry is breathtaking. Using a sharp tool, master engravers covered the leather-hard clay with intricate, flowing designs. The motifs are a graceful vocabulary of the sacred and the natural. You see elaborate scrolls and spirals, which may represent water, wind, or the path of the sun. There are delicate feather patterns and, most strikingly, stylized birds, often depicted with curving beaks and sweeping wings. These designs were not merely painted on, they were incised into the very fabric of the pot, creating lines that would catch the light and shadow, making the images dance across the surface. The beauty is undeniable, but its sudden prominence is a puzzle. This sophisticated style appears to bloom relatively late in the sequence, as the era of the great mound building centers was waning. Why would such a refined and distinctive artistic tradition reach its peak at a time of presumed social stress and dispersal? One theory sees it as a powerful local innovation. Perhaps as the old political hierarchy centered on places like Bottle Creek relaxed, artistic expression found new freedom. Skilled potters, no longer bound to produce only certain forms for a central elite, began experimenting, developing a unique visual language that expressed their community's identity and spiritual beliefs. The focus on avian imagery could signal a deepening connection to specific clan totems or gods of the sky and water. Alternatively, the designs might whisper of influence from far away. The scrolls and feather motifs bear a striking resemblance to styles found in contemporaneous cultures to the west, along the Mississippi River and into present-day Louisiana. This could indicate a period of increased interaction, perhaps through refugee movements or revitalized trade networks. As the old order shifted, new ideas flowed along with goods, inspiring local artists to blend outside influences with their own traditions, creating something entirely new. The most intriguing possibility is that this pottery represents a kind of religious or cultural revival. In times of uncertainty, when harvests were unreliable and old authorities faltered, communities often turned to art and ritual to reaffirm their identity and seek divine favor. The creation of these extraordinarily beautiful vessels may have been a communal act of faith. Each carefully engraved feather or bird could have been a prayer for abundance, a symbol of hope, or a means to connect with protective spirits during a turbulent age. The pottery itself becomes a historical document, not of kings and conquests, but of resilience. It tells us that even as the world they knew was transforming, people were investing immense care into creating objects of meaning and beauty. They were not collapsing, they were adapting, and their art was evolving to meet the needs of a new time. When we hold a fragment of Claiborne pottery, we are not just holding a piece of a broken pot. We are holding a snapshot from a society in transition, a message engraved in clay that says, in the face of great change, we still create, we still believe, and we still find ways to make our world beautiful. The most profound truths of that ancient world were not written in words, but forged in metal and carved in stone. Among the most captivating finds from Alabama's ceremonial centers are objects of pure symbolic power, items that seem to channel the very forces of the universe. These are the ritual artifacts, the sacred tools of a forgotten faith, crafted with breathtaking skill. They include perfectly circular stone discs, some etched with spiraling designs. There are copper repoussé plates embossed with radiant sunbursts, their rays reaching outward in a permanent metallic dawn, and there are the elaborate carved stone pipes, masterpieces of miniature sculpture, depicting birds of prey with hooked beaks and serpents coiled in eternal motion. Each piece is a testament to an artisan who was also a theologian, transforming raw material into a vessel for belief. The mystery that surrounds them is not about what they are, but about the precise, living role they played in the spiritual mechanics of their society. Were these objects used in high-stakes solstice ceremonies, aligned with the sun's journey to renew the world's contract with the heavens? Could the copper sun symbols have been worn as chest plates or headdress ornaments by priest chiefs, their bodies becoming living avatars of the solar deity during ritual performances? Or were these items themselves the ultimate offering, carefully placed in ceremonial caches or buried in temple mounds as gifts to appease or thank the gods? The recurring motifs offer our clearest window into their cosmology. The bird of prey, perhaps a falcon or an eagle, is a nearly universal symbol of the upper world, a messenger between the earthly realm and the celestial powers. The serpent, often depicted with a rattle, represents the lower world, the earth and the underworld, a creature of transformation and potent earthly knowledge. And the sun, the central life-giving force, binds it all together. This imagery paints a picture of a deeply interconnected cosmos, a three-tiered universe where spiritual power flowed between the sky, the earth, and the watery depths below. A priest king smoking a pipe carved in the shape of a diving bird might have been symbolically drawing the sky's power down into himself. A stone disc placed on an altar could have been a portable model of the cosmic order. We can recognize the symbols, we can admire the artistry, but the specific rituals, the chants that accompanied their use, the exact moment a copper sun was raised to catch the first light of dawn, these experiences are lost. These objects are the frozen grammar of a spiritual language. We have recovered the nouns and the verbs, the eagle, the serpent, the sun, but the syntax that connected them into a living prayer has faded into silence. They are hauntingly beautiful reminders that the most sophisticated part of any civilization is often its inner world, a realm of meaning that leaves behind only the most exquisite and enigmatic of clues. Scattered in creek beds and tucked into the soil of old sites, you can sometimes find a stone that feels wrong in your hand. It is too smooth, too perfectly round. These are the enigmatic stone spheres of Alabama, ranging from the size of a child's marble to that of a heavy bowling ball. Their surfaces are often unnervingly uniform, worn by water or time to a shape that seems to defy random chance. Finding one prompts an immediate, instinctive question: is this a product of the earth, or did someone make this? The most likely answer lies in a fascinating geological process. These spheres are often concretions, formations where mineral cement has solidified around a central nucleus within sedimentary rock layers. Over eons, as the surrounding softer rock erodes away, these harder, cemented masses are exposed, and natural tumbling in water can wear them into remarkably spherical shapes. Nature, it seems, is a capable sculptor of perfect forms, yet the human eye and hand are drawn to such perfection, and that is where the mystery deepens. In many indigenous cultures across the Americas, spherical stones held significant meaning. They were used in games similar to the famed chunky game of the Mississippians, where a rolling stone disc was chased with spears. Could some of these spheres be game balls, smoothed further by generations of play? Others might have served as ceremonial objects, symbols of the sun, the moon, or the earth itself, perfect representations of celestial bodies used in rituals. The tantalizing possibility is that ancient people found these naturally round stones and saw their potential, then deliberately modified them, chipping and grinding them to an even greater perfection for a sacred or social purpose. This creates a maddening classification problem for archaeologists. Without clear tool marks or a definitive archaeological context, like being found in a burial cache with other ritual items, a stone sphere is just a curious rock. The line between a fascinating natural oddity and a profound human artifact becomes impossibly thin. This simple object, a round stone, becomes a mirror. It reflects our deep desire to find intention in the world, to see the human hand in the shape of things. It challenges us to ask where nature's art ends and human reverence begins. In the end, each sphere is a quiet, solid riddle. It rests in the palm, a weight of pure possibility, asking us if we are holding a trick of geology or a thought made stone by someone who looked at the world and sought to make it perfectly round. Long after the last mound stood silent, a new kind of legend took root in the Alabama hills. This was not the mystery of a forgotten people, but a promise of hidden wealth, whispered in the shadow of Spanish armor. From the colonial period onward, stories began to circulate among settlers and adventurers about lost silver mines, supposedly worked by Hernando de Soto's men or later Spanish expeditions. The tales were always tantalizingly similar. Explorers, having discovered a rich vein of silver in the remote wilderness, would conceal the entrance to their mine before departing, intending to return. To mark the spot for their countrymen, they would carve cryptic symbols into nearby trees or boulders, a cross, a series of slashes, a strange letter, and then vanish, leaving the treasure waiting. These legends are a direct echo of the earlier enigma of the Alabama stone, but with a crucial shift in motive. Where the stone hinted at ancient messages or records, the mine markers spoke a universal language of greed and secrecy. They transformed the landscape from a place of spiritual mystery into a literal treasure map, its key forever lost. The connection to DeSoto is particularly potent, weaving the historical trauma of his violent march directly into the fabric of local folklore. His expedition did pass through the region, and his men were known to seek precious metals, so the seed of the story has a grain of possible truth. Yet, no Spanish silver mine from the 16th century has ever been authenticated in Alabama. This is where history bleeds into frontier mythology. In the tough early days of American settlement, the idea of a hidden fortune just over the next ridge was a powerful form of hope. It was a lottery ticket written on the land itself. The stories gave purpose to exploration and a romantic explanation for any unusual marking found in the woods. A weather-worn natural fissure in a rock could become a Spanish cross. A lightning scar on an old oak might be seen as a deliberate blaze. The human mind, especially one hungry for fortune, is exceptionally good at seeing patterns where it wants to. These legends are a perfect blend of a possible historical nugget. Spanish exploration did happen, with layers of wishful thinking and oral tradition that grew more elaborate with each telling. They served as local entertainment, a reason for weekend prospecting trips, and a way to claim a more dramatic, European-connected past for the rugged frontier. While archaeologists dismiss the tales as almost certainly apocryphal, their persistence is itself a fascinating artifact. They show how the deep mystery of ancient Alabama did not end with the mound builders, but was seamlessly inherited and reinterpreted by every new wave of people to arrive. The land that once held spiritual secrets for indigenous peoples was later believed to hold material secrets for conquistadors and pioneers. The romance of the lost mine is the colonial and frontier counterpart to the older, more profound mysteries. It represents a shift from seeking to understand a lost world to hoping to profit from its rumored leavings. The stories endure not because of evidence, but because of desire, the timeless dream that the earth might still hold one last great secret, not of who we were, but of the fortune we might still find. But the Tennessee River holds a different kind of secret, one locked away by our own modern hands. In the early to mid-20th century, the construction of a series of massive dams, Wilson, Wheeler, Pickwick, and others, transformed the river into a chain of placid, engineered lakes. This taming of the water for power and navigation came with an immense silent cost. As the reservoirs filled, they inundated thousands of acres of river valley, land that had been home to human communities for over 10,000 years. In a single generation, countless archaeological sites vanished beneath the rising waters. Entire ancient villages, burial grounds, fishing camps, and ceremonial spots were submerged, sealed under layers of silt and deep, slow-moving water. This created a submerged mystery of staggering scale. What exactly did we lose? The potential is haunting. Beneath the surface of Lake Wilson or Wheeler could lie the remains of a major Mississippian town rivaling Moundville, its platform mounds now forming strange humps on the lakebed. There could be unique wooden structures preserved in the oxygen, poor mud ritual palisades, house posts, or carved effigies that would never survive in dry soil. Ceremonial caches of copper and shell might rest undisturbed, and the silt could hold a perfect snapshot of daily life, with baskets, textiles, and food remains intact. This is not mere speculation. Modern technology offers ghostly glimpses. Side-scan sonar and magnetometer surveys have mapped the lake floors, revealing clear geometric anomalies, straight lines, and right angles that nature rarely makes. These sonar shadows hint at buried walls, palisade lines, or the foundations of large structures. In some shallow areas during extreme droughts, when water levels drop dramatically, the past briefly reemerges. Mud-cracked lake beds have exposed scattered pottery shards and stone tools, silent proof of what lies hidden the rest of the time. This mystery is uniquely poignant because it is one of pure potential. We know the treasures are there, but they are entombed in an environment that is both a preservative and a prison. The water and silt can protect organic materials beautifully, but accessing them requires complex, expensive underwater archaeology. The sites are often deep, the currents can be dangerous, and visibility is near zero. It is a paradox. The very act that preserved these sites also placed them behind a barrier more formidable than any stone wall. Every time a boat passes over these lakes, it glides over a drowned library of prehistory. The Tennessee River, now a series of placid reservoirs, has become the largest and most inaccessible museum in Alabama. It holds chapters of the human story we have not yet read and may never fully recover. This submerged landscape is a permanent reminder that our understanding of the ancient past is not just limited by what has been lost to time, but by what we have deliberately, if unknowingly, placed beyond our reach. The artistry of a single copper axe or a carved shell speaks a language far greater than one city. These objects were part of a vast, shared spiritual vocabulary that connected civilizations across the American Southeast, a phenomenon scholars call the Southeastern Ceremonial Complex. Imagine it not as a single religion, but as a powerful cultural movement, a network of shared symbols, artistic styles, and ritual practices that link societies from Oklahoma to the Carolinas and from the Gulf Coast to the Midwest. For over 2 centuries, this complex wove together the spiritual lives of distant peoples. Alabama, and specifically the great city of Moundville, was not a passive recipient of these ideas, but a major creative center, a powerhouse node in this ancient network. The artifacts found there are not local oddities, they are masterpieces of original tradition. The embossed copper plates with their radiating suns, the stone pipes carved into raptors and serpents, the engraved shells showing dancers and mythical beings, all of these are executed in the definitive style of the complex. This tells us the people of Moundville were not isolated, they were fully fluent in the sacred iconography of their age, contributing to it and refining it. The mystery lies in how this intricate system spread across such a vast and geographically diverse region. Was it carried along established trade routes, moving with prized goods like copper, shells, and mica as a kind of spiritual prestige? Did elite marriages between ruling families of different chiefdoms serve as conduits for sharing rituals and symbols? Or was there a more forceful element where the ideology spread alongside the influence of a particularly powerful and expansionist polity, its symbols serving as a visual language of authority and divine right? The content of the imagery itself offers chilling clues to its meaning. This was not a gentle belief system. The recurring symbols point to a world obsessed with warfare, cosmic power, and the thin veil between life and death. We see engraved depictions of fearsome warrior figures, often shown holding maces or severed heads. The iconic birdman, part human and part raptor, likely represents a being who could traverse the upper world of the gods. Most striking are the symbols of death and renewal, like skulls and bones, and the weeping eye motif, which may signify mourning or a portal to the spirit world. This suggests a religion that ritually engaged with themes of sacrifice, conflict, and rebirth, possibly to ensure agricultural fertility or the stability of the cosmos. The widespread adoption of this intense, violent iconography hints at a period of heightened competition and social stress, where claims to divine sanction for warfare and leadership became essential. The Southeastern Ceremonial Complex provided a common framework for that claim, a way for elites from different valleys and river systems to recognize each other's power and participate in a shared, prestigious spiritual reality. When a chief at Moundville donned a headdress with a copper falcon, he was not just declaring his local authority, he was aligning himself with a cosmic order understood from the Great Lakes to the Florida coast. The complex unified a continent's worth of cultures not through empire, but through a shared dream of power, written in a breathtaking and terrifying artistic language. The precision of these alignments forces a single stunning realization. These earthworks were not just monuments, they were machines for telling time. Across Alabama, from the grand plazas of Moundville to the solitary ridges of smaller sites, the architecture speaks a language of celestial mechanics. Archaeoastronomy, the study of how ancient peoples understood the sky, reveals that the builders intentionally oriented their world to the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. At Moundville, for instance, the great central plaza is aligned along a precise east-west axis. On the morning of the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun would have risen directly over the center of the plaza, bathing the entire ceremonial space in a symmetrical wash of light, a powerful symbol of cosmic balance. This was no accident. It was a built-in alarm clock for the entire community, signaling a moment of equal day and night, a time to perhaps reset rituals or begin a new agricultural cycle. But the alignments go far beyond simple solar markers. Some mounds and earthworks appear positioned to capture the most extreme movements of the moon. The moon does not rise and set in the same place each night. Its path slowly oscillates over an 18.6-year cycle. At the peak of this cycle, known as the major lunar standstill, the moon rises at its farthest possible point, north on the horizon. Evidence suggests that certain mounds and sightlines were engineered to frame this rare event. Imagine the ceremony. On a night that only comes once in a generation, the community gathers. A priest or chief stands atop a specific platform, looking along a carefully cleared pathway between two other mounds. As the moon crests the distant tree line, it appears perfectly centered in this earthen corridor, a glowing orb sliding into a slot made of soil and shadow. This would have been a moment of profound power, a direct, predictable communion with a celestial force they undoubtedly revered. The knowledge required to plan for an event that takes nearly 2 decades to repeat is staggering. It implies generations of meticulous observation, with knowledge passed down through oral tradition, likely encoded in stories and rituals. These celestial calendars serve the most practical and sacred needs of the society. The solstice sunrises, framed by mound corners, told them precisely when to plant their corn, when the floods might come, and when to harvest. The moon's phases track shorter cycles, perhaps for scheduling markets, ceremonies, or hunts. But the purpose was deeper than mere scheduling. By anchoring their architecture to the sky, they were literally grounding their community in the cosmos. They were demonstrating that their social order, their chief's authority, and their very existence were part of a larger, predictable, and divine pattern. The mound became a pivot point between earth and heaven. This sophisticated understanding transforms our view of them. They were not just moving dirt, they were mapping time itself. They were encoding their most vital knowledge not in words on a page, but in the relationship between a man-made hill and the path of a star. The mystery that remains is one of granular intent. How did they achieve such precision without written records or modern tools? Were there specialist astronomer priests who spent lifetimes watching the horizon, placing stakes in the ground to mark a star's path over years? Did they use simple tools like notched sticks or aligned posts of wood to track these slow celestial dances? The alignments are clear, but the methods are silent. We see the magnificent, fixed result of their celestial science, but the living process of discovery, the trial and error, the nightly vigils are lost. Their world was a clock, and they built its gears from the earth beneath their feet and the infinite sky above. The grand monuments and celestial alignments tell a story of power and belief, but they leave the most intimate chapters unwritten. To step beyond the silent mounds and into the light of a long-vanished morning is to ask about the texture of daily life. Who were the people who carried those baskets of earth, who painted those pots, who gathered beneath that equinox sun? Archaeology offers fragments of an answer, glimpses into the rhythm of their world. We know their diet from the bones and shells they left behind. They were masterful farmers, cultivating fields of corn, beans, and squash in the rich river valleys, a trio of crops that nourished a growing population. They supplemented this with deer and turkey from the forest, fish from the rivers, and nuts like hickory and acorn, which they ground into flour. Their health, read from skeletal remains, shows a people generally strong and adapted, but not without hardship. Signs of arthritis speak of a life of physical labor, carrying, building, and grinding. Evidence of occasional malnutrition or periods of famine whispers of years when the rains did not come. They lived in sturdy, thatch-roofed houses built around wooden posts, with walls woven from cane and plastered with clay, homes that were warm in winter and cool in summer, clustered around the central plazas. We can reconstruct the framework of their days, the work of planting and harvest, the craft of potting and weaving, the communal gatherings for ceremony. Yet for all this evidence, the human essence remains a profound mystery. What did their language sound like? Was it melodic and flowing or sharp and staccato? What jokes did they tell around the evening fire? What lullabies did mothers sing to their children? We have no record of their names, no sense of their personal stories. The young hunter's first successful kill, the potter's pride in a perfectly fired vessel, the grief of a parent burying a child. Their family structures are a guess. Did they live in large extended clans with aunts and uncles and grandparents all under one roof, or in smaller nuclear families? How did they choose their leaders, and what happened to those who disagreed? The artifacts of childhood are particularly poignant. We find small clay toys, tiny pots, and little bows, telling us that children learn through play, mimicking the adults around them. But what games did they invent? What stories did they whisper to each other in the shadows of the great mounds? This is the deepest silence. We can study the tools they used and the food they ate, but we cannot hear the laughter that echoed across the plaza, or the anxious conversations held in low voices when the harvest looked thin. We cannot know their private fears, their secret hopes, their dreams upon waking. This personal dimension is the final frontier of the mystery. It reminds us powerfully that these were not just a culture or a civilization. They were a collection of individuals, each with a rich inner life, a unique perspective, and a voice that the centuries have utterly stilled. We are left building a world from its bones, forever wondering about the warmth of its skin. Yet the story of Alabama's ancient past is not one of endings, but of continuous discovery. The very tools we used to see into that past are undergoing a revolution, transforming archaeology from a slow science of trowels and brushes into a high-tech hunt for hidden worlds. A key technology is LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine flying a plane over a dense, seemingly impenetrable forest. A LiDAR unit on that plane fires millions of laser pulses per second at the ground below. These pulses penetrate the smallest gaps in the canopy, bounce off the earth, and return to a sensor. By measuring the time each pulse takes to return, a computer can construct a breathtakingly precise, three-dimensional map of the ground surface, digitally stripping away every single tree, bush, and building. What remains is the naked earth, revealing shapes invisible to the human eye on the ground. In Alabama, LiDAR has already begun to unveil secrets. In heavily wooded areas, researchers have identified previously unknown mounds, not as grand as Moundville, but as smaller ceremonial platforms or house mounds that had been completely swallowed by centuries of forest growth. It has traced the faint, ghostly lines of ancient roads or causeways, subtle ridges in the soil that connected communities, and it has pinpointed potential village sites marked by clusters of depressions and rises. Each of these digital signatures is a new address in the ancient landscape, a place to begin a real-world excavation. Another powerful tool is ground-penetrating radar. This device is rolled over a field or plaza like a lawnmower, sending radio waves into the earth. When those waves hit a change in density, a buried wall, a storage pit, or even the subtle difference in soil where a wooden post once rotted, they bounce back, creating a sonogram of the soil. This allows archaeologists to peer into the ground without ever digging a hole, to map the layout of a buried town, locate individual homes, and identify the most promising spots for careful excavation. This is how we find the foundations of the world that once stood atop those silent mounds. Perhaps the most personal revolution comes from DNA analysis. By extracting ancient genetic material from bones and teeth, scientists can now ask questions that artifacts alone could never answer. They can trace family relationships within a burial mound, determining if the people interred together were siblings, parents, and children, or perhaps war captives from afar. They can track the movement of populations over millennia, seeing how groups migrated and mixed long before written history. A single tooth from a site in the Tennessee River Valley could one day tell us if that individual's ancestors came from the Great Lakes region or the Gulf Coast, adding a profound human thread to the story told by trade goods like copper and shells. These technologies are not just confirming old theories, they are actively creating new ones. A recent LiDAR survey might reveal that a known mound complex is twice as large as previously thought, with outlying structures that force a complete reevaluation of its political reach. Ground-penetrating radar scans of a field long considered empty might show the clear geometric outlines of a major settlement, shifting the entire map of a culture's territory. The most exciting mystery of all is what we have not yet found. With these eyes that can see through forest and soil, what remains hidden? Could there be a royal tomb, a burial chamber for a paramount chief of Moundville, left completely undisturbed for 800 years, its copper regalia and shell engravings lying exactly as they were placed? Is there a previously unknown major ceremonial center, a sister city to Moundville, hidden in some remote river bend or deep within a national forest, waiting for its Lydia moment? Or perhaps the ultimate prize, a cache of artifacts that finally provides the key, a set of inscribed objects that, when analyzed together, begin to decipher a symbolic system, turning those beautiful cryptic engravings on shell and copper into a readable text. The narrative of ancient Alabama is not a closed book gathering dust on a shelf. It is a living document with new paragraphs being written by every satellite pass, every read or scan, and every delicate extraction of ancient DNA. The next great discovery, the one that rewrites a chapter of this story, could be sitting beneath a farmer's field, a suburban backyard, or the quiet floor of a hardwood forest at this very moment. The past is not finished speaking, it is simply waiting for us to learn how to listen, and so the land of Alabama holds its breath, keeping 25 of its oldest secrets. We have walked the silent plazas of Moundville, felt the chill of lost catacombs, and traced the enigmatic carvings on forgotten stones. We have searched for a city burned to ash and wondered over copper that traveled 1,000 miles. Each of these mysteries, from the colossal earthworks to the smallest inscribed pebble, is a thread in a tapestry we are still learning to see. They remind us powerfully that history is not a list of settled facts, but a living conversation with the past. Every unanswered question is an open door, an invitation to look closer and wonder more. So we pass the question to you. Which of these Alabama enigmas captures your imagination the most? Is it the silent dispersal of the mound builders, the ghostly promise of the Wheeler Basin relics, or the celestial code written into the very alignment of the earth? Perhaps you have a local legend, a family story, or a curious artifact of your own that whispers of Alabama's deep past. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us continue the exploration together. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of ancient America, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. There are countless more historical mysteries waiting for us from every corner of the globe. Thank you for watching.